Hey there, Gothamites. Brian Ward here, welcoming you to another episode of the Arkham Sessions, brought to you by Comics Alliance. With me, as always, the psychologist that takes a look under the mask, Dr. Andrea Letamendi.
Hello.
Hello. Drea, you have got a really big deal article out right now over at one of my favorite websites. Tell the folks.
Well, you sort of spoiled it. I was going to say I was in Playboy this week, but you did mention article, and this is true. I wrote up an article actually about someone we talk about quite frequently on our show, Bruce Wayne.
What?
So with the, of course, the TV show Gotham airing this week for the first time, and the pilot being out, and everybody talking about little Bruce Wayne and what he experienced as a child and how he will grow up to become Batman, I wrote basically an article exploring both the adaptive and maladaptive ways that he responds and reacts to this trauma that he experienced. Of course, his the death of his parents, the murder of his parents. So in that article, I talk about kind of the different ways in which we would approach, child therapy and our understanding of the complexity really of developmental psychopathology, what that really means. I mean, those are just fancy words that mean the development of wellness and the development of illness, and how that relates to Bruce Wayne.
And you've also got a second article at one of my other favorite websites, if not my favorite website, Comics Alliance, with the debut of Gotham.
This is true. So I really talk in depth about the pilot episode of Gotham in my Comics Alliance review.
And do you have a lot of good things to say about Gotham? Did you enjoy Gotham?
I do. It's a little bit controversial. I feel like some people, just out of some strange, internal policy, they won't watch it. They think too much has changed. They're not interested in this particular story.
So the purists.
Maybe. Yeah. And I'm a little bit more open-minded. I'm certainly, I'm very curious.
Yeah.
About little Bruce Wayne and Gotham City and how this all started. I think this is really an opportunity for us to explore the psychology of these characters.
With every new, I've said this before on other episodes, I'm sure, and you and I have talked about it. It's one of the reasons why I actually enjoyed Man of Steel. I can disconnect myself from the source material, and any new writer that takes on the material gets their crack at an origin story. And we can't go with the burden of what's been before. We have to go with what that writer is declaring is canon in this particular series.
Right.
So anyone who decided to make changes and then other people who don't like it, well, that's not really fair to the writer that you've entrusted this story with. This is a new story. It doesn't mean that the comics aren't there anymore. It doesn't mean that canon has been completely changed. They're just trying to figure out a way to make Gotham City interesting, however many years before Batman comes onto the scene. And it's something I'm okay with. Now, I've got other fundamental problems with the series.
What did you think of the show?
I think the first half of it is a little heavy on the name checking. I think there are too many people being called things that we know that they will eventually become.
Okay, so like the Penguin.
The fact that Poison Ivy, we see her as a child and her name is now Ivy instead of Pamela Isley, and so we've got them. Edward Nygma shows up. It's just gotten to a point where I would like to see Batman come onto the scene because Gotham got worse, not necessarily because all of these people were there from the very beginning.
Right. So you're saying that these villains migrated to Gotham at some point, rather than they were born in Gotham, developed, that they were a part of Gotham City throughout Bruce Wayne's childhood, that there's something inherent about that particular piece.
Yeah. At this point, I feel like we're basically just waiting for Bruce to grow up, because we've now been introduced to a number of the villains, and we know that there's already been talk about there being a Joker, or maybe even several people who could potentially be the Joker. So now I don't really feel like Gotham. I don't get the sense that we're seeing Gotham's origins so much as we're just kind of seeing Gotham 10, 12 years before Batman gets there.
Well, right. But I completely disagree in the sense that for me to fully understand an individual, I need to know some parts of their history. I need to know their traumatic events. I need to know their, their backgrounds, how they were raised, who parented them, these important questions that help us understand their behavior now. So while it sounds like what you're saying is, well, I kind of know what's going to happen, so I'm disinterested in the development of these characters.
I already have, no, I wouldn't be disinterested in the development of the characters if we didn't meet them in the pilot. Give us a season or two before you introduce us to all these other characters. There's no reason in the world why we need to see Selina Kyle, aka Catwoman, as a child, looking just like a mini Catwoman. Like it implies that she never grew. She never became that character. She already was that character. Ivy already is obsessed with plants. It's just sort of...
Well, but you have to start somewhere, so...
Right, so start somewhere. Don't start at the end. The end, now it's just, they're just growing up.
Maybe, are you somewhat irritated or upset at the idea that 3 very prominent redheaded characters are...
now you got to bring that up.
Sorry, but I noticed that 3 characters who are, I would say, known to be redheaded are either blonde or brunette in this story. So that would be James Gordon, his wife Barbara Gordon, and of course...
Well, she's not his wife yet. She's still Barbara Kane at this point.
Okay. So his partner, his romantic partner, future mother of Batgirl /
Unless
Barbara
they
Gordon.
change it. They could change it.
And of course, little Ivy is... she's sort of got a brunette color.
I didn't notice. I mean, to me, she was probably on the more of the reddish hair side, but she was also grungy and, she'd
she
clearly been rolling
she was
around
actually
in the dirt.
dirty.
Like, that's just, I mean, I don't know. There's just, I think it's too much in the course of the first 44 minutes of the show. I think we could have developed it a little bit more. We could have met these characters along the way. I don't think there's any reason why Bruce needs to know Selina, because clearly they're going to go in that route. I don't think there's any reason to believe that Ivy is going to be developing into Poison Ivy from day one. I think we should meet her somewhere down the line, and in a different way. I don't know. I'll give the show a shot. I saw the pilot. It was okay. Once it became a crime procedural, that's what I want to see. If we got to see Lieutenant James Gordon in The Wire, I would totally watch that show, because we don't need supervillains. We're watching a guy trying to take down corruption of the city and of the police force, and that's enough for me, because we know that Gotham gets bad. That's the other problem that I have with this show. Fundamentally, it can't end well. It's got to end basically with Batman coming to town, because Gordon wasn't able to do it on his own. The police department is corrupt. The city is corrupt. It's only got to get worse over the next 12, 15 years. And we're going to watch that happen. The good guys can't win.
Well, and that speaks to the psychology of the audience, that despite some of your misgivings and reluctance, there is a large audience for this show. And I think part of that has to do with the fandom and the, our love for the character of Bruce Wayne and of course Batman. But I think there is this curiosity we have about just how bad it's going to get. And we'd like to observe and witness some of that sort of citywide maladaption. So for more psychology of Gotham, you can check out my article on Comics Alliance. Should be up today.
Yeah. And then everyone should definitely let us know what you think about the show in the comment section below. So let us know, and maybe we'll talk about it as the show progresses. It is coming back next week after all, and so are we. So who knows what we might think.
Well, one of us will be.
Well, I'm sorry that you won't be here. So let's talk about this episode of the Arkham Sessions, shall we? Batman the Animated Series. It's the reason we're all here. It's our opportunity to get reacquainted with Selina Kyle.
Let's skin that cat.
Yeah,
No.
let us indeed. This is the second time that we've seen her, technically the third, because the first time we saw her was in a two-parter. It was the Cat in the Claw parts 1 and 2. But because that was one story, I count it as one. And what I like about this particular series is it begins acknowledging that episode and the fact that Selina Kyle actually helped save Gotham City from the Red Claw. We open up and we see that Selina is on trial for her crimes. Now, this hasn't been a regular trial. She actually pled guilty to the crimes. And the judge says something very interesting here, and let's see if you caught it, Drea.
Selina Kyle, you have pled guilty to the charges brought against Catwoman.
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, it's the exact same problem that we ran into last week. Suddenly, let's put it this way. If John Wayne Gacy were to, go to trial for his crimes, I don't think the judge would ever be like, John Wayne Gacy, you are guilty of the crimes committed by Pogo the Clown. It's not a separate identity. It's just the disguise she was wearing.
Right. Well, two things. One is, well, now everyone knows who Selina Kyle is. That
Yeah.
It's not a mystery anymore that Catwoman is Selina Kyle. Selina Kyle is Catwoman. And then the other thing here is that it's almost like the acts, the behaviors that she demonstrated as Catwoman are sort of separated as, well, when you were Catwoman, you did things that were illegal, so we need to put you to trial for that.
Yeah.
It's
taking
it's
responsibility for a second person persona, maybe something along those lines. But the judge is a little lenient in the verdict.
Since you did help save Gotham City from annihilation, and the district attorney has recommended a plea bargain, I have decided to sentence you to 5 years probation.
Yeah. So she's getting 5 years probation. Now, what's interesting is the DA is actually the one, or assistant DA or whomever, is actually the one who suggested the plea bargain. So the prosecuting attorneys weren't even going after hard jail time. They were like, let's plea it down to 5 years probation.
And she's got some fans here.
Yeah.
She has like a little fan group.
Yeah, everybody gets really excited. But you know what?
I'm not finished!
No, she's not. She wants Selina to know that if she ever even thinks about donning the Catwoman costume, and I guess persona, ever again, she's basically going to get the book thrown at her. Well, this obviously raises a number of questions throughout Gotham City. Now that Selina Kyle is on the loose,
can this Lady Leopard really change her spots?
what do you think, Drea? Can someone make the change?
Was that someone opening up like a beer? I wonder. Clink.
It was Bruce Wayne working out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, getting
Okay.
all hot and bothered for Selina Kyle coming out of the courtroom.
So what was the question? I'm very distracted right now.
The question was,
Can this Lady Leopard really change her spots?
can she?
Clink. Well, right. Yes. I think, of course, when it comes to Selina Kyle, remember we talked about some of the reasoning behind her criminal behavior. And so I
And
think
the reasoning was that she felt justified. She was actually protecting the wildlife.
Right.
And, all
right.
that.
Much like Poison Ivy, she has this rationale behind some of her illegal behavior.
Yeah.
So I think, again, the same thing that we discussed regarding Poison Ivy. Can we kind of, guide that behavior towards something that's more adaptive and pro-social, which it can be.
I don't think so.
Oh, come on.
I'm just,
that
Bruce
may
is
be
saying
enough.
it right there.
That may be enough to keep her from having to engage in illegal activity. And it's sort of, she's kind of the anti-hero in some moments as well, because we know Gotham City is corrupt. We know that there is going to be some very, very questionable and, ethically problematic things going on throughout the city, and that she may be compelled to be the person, who else is going to rescue these animals? Who else is going to ensure that there's going to be safety and security for cats, for wildlife? So I think that, I don't know that she necessarily needs to change.
She's not legally allowed to become that person. So unlike Batman, who technically isn't legally allowed to do it either, unlike Batman, who believes that he's the only one who can stand up for the citizens of Gotham against the superstitious, cowardly lot, you've got Selina Kyle, who believes that she needs to don this persona to stand up for the animals of Gotham, and she's not really allowed to. So do you think that Selina would be able to not don that costume and not become a cat burglar in order to pay for her, buying up land and, as wildlife preserves and all that?
I think there's a chance, but as they say, the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. So I would say that unless there's something that changes, she will very likely be compelled to do it.
Yeah. Well, you and Bruce may actually feel the same way about Selina. He's a little skeptical.
I'm not totally convinced she's given up her criminal life.
He's so judgy.
He is a little judgy. Talk about that a little bit. Once again, we run into Bruce Wayne, or Bruce, the Bruce persona, who, again, automatically jumps to the worst in people.
Right. Well, in the last episode involving Catwoman, we talked about his black and white thinking, or all or nothing thinking, that someone is either bad or someone is good. So if they have this history of bad behavior, of breaking rules and dismissing laws and kind of doing their own thing, he may kind of, categorize them as a villain or as someone who's going to be against him. Right. So we can probably sit here and say with confidence that, there's a more complex psychology behind Selina, that there is a chance that she would change. There is a chance that she's not just inherently bad and will do bad things. But I think that Bruce has this, this kind of simplistic way of dealing with her, or of conceptualizing her, in that he believes that now that she has this history, that's how she's going to behave. He just, he has this, unfortunately, he doesn't believe that she can redeem herself. He doesn't really believe in her. He's kind of, again, there's a lot of judgment around that.
Let's skin that cat.
So yeah, and there's a little bit of conflict there, because he's also maybe even in love with her. He's certainly enamored by her. He is infatuated with her, but he's a little put off by the fact that, as we remember from the Cat in the Claw Part 1, she is actually in love with Batman, not with Bruce Wayne.
These modern relationships can be so complicated.
Yeah. So it's one of those situations where, is maybe his distrust in her simply that he can see that she only digs the dark, brooding, mysterious guy, and that she's bound to want to put on the costume once again? Or does he think that she just doesn't have the ability to change? Well, we'll have to see. She does try, though. She goes home, and she's very happy to be home. Unfortunately, something isn't there waiting for her.
Where's my cat?
Isis is missing. We all remember Isis, the cat she had with her. And, probably her best friend and sidekick, the cat who actually helped her rob, jewelry and, things like that.
She's a very talented cat. I'd be pretty pissed if she were missing.
Yeah. Well, Isis is missing. She has no idea where she is, and she decides to go looking for her. She does it the only way that really you can. You do it the same way that Dick Grayson went looking for Tony Zuko back when he was a kid. You wander the streets of Gotham showing people a photo of the cat, and in a dialogue-less montage, there are people just shaking their heads no. She goes looking and ends up finding two cats that are very angry with one another down in an alleyway, and she decides to feed them because she's their friend, and they enjoy the food that she lays out for them. But all of that is interrupted when a truck comes down, and it's got a very familiar name on the side, Daggett.
Oh no.
Oh yeah, we know who owns this truck. It is none other than Roland Daggett, who we all remember from, he is the one behind Clayface. Mm-hmm. So a lot going on here. Two folks of his are there with nets, and they're looking for animals, for stray cats, and they're going to go and try to take these cats. She ends up fighting them off and getting into a little trouble. These two, they aren't really having it. But luckily Batman is there, maybe because he didn't trust her.
Oh, he followed her.
Maybe he may have followed her, but he sort of saves her there in that moment. And, but not before Selina can, plop a trash can over the head of the woman who, by the way, redhead.
That's one way to take out the trash.
So Batman helps save the day. And they are nearly given the opportunity to have a romantic, reunion. Except that cops, led by Renee Montoya, come down the alley. Batman takes a hike.
Good.
Allowing Selina to get arrested.
Again.
Yeah. Selina ends up getting arrested because she apparently attacked these two people who were simply trying to pick up animals to take to foster homes and shelters. And since she's on probation and Renee and her partner don't really trust her, she's taken to jail. She's read her Miranda rights, taken to jail. Who puts up the bail? None other than Bruce Wayne. But, when he picks her up, she kind of makes it clear that while she appreciates it...
I like you a lot, but as a friend.
Oh, friend-zoned.
Yeah. It happened again. Because if we remember, she's been friend-zoning him from the very beginning. When she ended up winning him in an auction.
Right.
And,
Well, remember, his lifestyle doesn't interest her. He's not as exciting and, as, I don't know, it's not exhilarating to be around Bruce Wayne. Mm-hmm. Now, she's been hanging out with Batman. That's a completely different type of pairing. It's a different experience to be with him. So I think that in comparison, Bruce Wayne is kind of plain and boring.
Yeah. Yeah.
She's in love with Batman.
Yeah.
I just said that.
It's true. And you and Bruce totally agree.
We always agree. We are the same. I am Batman.
You pretty much are Batman. But, it begs the question, is Bruce now sort of getting to this point of, I don't want to say stalker, fanatic, but he clearly is making his own feelings known. He is putting them there in front of Selina. He is bailing her out from jail. And she still sort of puts it out there like, look, I'm just not interested.
Right.
And he seems to understand in that moment. He says, well, as a friend, let me just say that you getting arrested could actually revoke your probation. So it's one of those situations where, like, look, I want to be here to help you, but you got to make sure you don't get into trouble. Well, it's Selina Kyle. She insists that you won't find Selina Kyle snooping around Daggett's operations. So who do you find snooping around Daggett's operations? Catwoman. Which begs the question again, we all know it's Selina Kyle. All of Gotham knows that Catwoman is Selina Kyle. So why is she putting on the costume again?
Well, she performs better in the costume.
It's true.
That's scientific fact.
She is more agile in the costume.
Well, no, I mean that, we actually perform better when we're in the same context or environment that we learn those particular skills. So I guess in English, I would say, if in that costume, that's how she has honed in and practiced and really excelled in being, swift and agile and, very ninja-like, very cat-like, she's going to perform similarly in that costume. Whereas if she's dressed as Selina Kyle, not in the costume, she may not be able to perform the same way. So if I were her, I would also put that costume on.
That goes without saying, doesn't it?
I think so. And any opportunity to put on a Catwoman costume, I think people should just take. So she does. And she goes into Daggett's operations, goes snooping around, finds a lab full of animals. And one of those animals happens to be Isis. Isis seems to be drugged a little bit. It's not quite right. She unlocks the gate, picks Isis up, and Isis flips out and bites her on the hand. This isn't good because a couple of scenes earlier, we actually saw what it was that Daggett was doing.
The speed at which the toxin overtakes the animal system is something to behold, Mr. Daggett.
That's right. Professor Milo is injecting these animals with this serum, this toxin, that is making them, for lack of a better word, it sort of looks like rabies. They become very feral, very angry, very, ready to attack at any given moment, regardless of who you are.
Yeah, that's what I understood from that clip, because, he's my people.
He is your people. He speaks lab language. And so that's what's going on. Well, Isis has clearly been infected with this serum, and Isis has bitten Catwoman. Well, unfortunately, within minutes, Catwoman is infected.
What's happening to me?
She becomes feverish, basically unable to stand. She drops to her knees, luckily, just as the Batmobile arrives. Batman comes out, sees her, takes her, and insists on going to a hospital. Well, she says that she absolutely can't go to a hospital because obviously that would revoke her probation if she shows up wearing this Catwoman costume. So she says she's got a hideout, and Batman takes her to the hideout, sort of puts her into bed. And,
wait, where's this hideout?
It's next to a frozen lake, and he
so some abandoned barn.
Kind of looks very feline like. It's cattish. So
it's a sanctuary.
It's definitely a hideout of some kind. It's not very well camouflaged. It's a hideout. So Batman leaves her there, but he notices that she is really quite feverish.
You're hot.
Now you notice.
Yeah, constantly with the flirty.
Took you long enough.
Yeah. So yeah, he then responds with,
I think the fever is making you delusional.
Yeah. He's just not having it.
No.
It's interesting because in costume, Batman is doing the same thing to Selina that Selina does to Bruce out of costume. So he's constantly making himself distant. Look, this isn't going to happen. Just letting you know. Even though Batman totally wants it.
Well, and we talked about this in the previous episode that she appeared in that he has these like very separate identities. And as, one would think, well, hell, here's your chance. Here's, an opportunity to connect with her, perhaps primarily physical, but, how many opportunities does he have, really? So he rejects it, of course, because, anything that might feel good is bad. So he moves away from it, he distances himself, and he doesn't make the connection that, well, this could be possibly, maybe not the healthiest thing, but possibly a way for me to express my feelings, a way for me to get some fulfillment in this area of companionship and romance. But he ain't having it.
Yeah. He ends up going to Roland Daggett's as well, snoops around, gets one of his thugs, and strings him up.
Let's play a little game.
And ends up getting information out of the thug. Ends up finding a viral antitoxin, and puts 2 and 2 together.
Viral antitoxins for a plague that doesn't exist yet. But if the plague is introduced via stray dogs and cats, it will blanket Gotham City within weeks.
Days, actually.
Yeah. So Daggett wants to infect all of Gotham City with this plague, and then he wants to basically sell the antitoxin as, pharmaceuticals. We've come in, we've saved the day, we've developed this antitoxin. So it's really quite devious. The episode is called Cat Scratch Fever, which is a real thing.
Right. This is some kind of medical condition. It's an infection, right?
Yeah. And it often, it's basically bacterial, and it's transferred often with children, but it comes from basically cats, animals scratching or biting the victim.
I read an article that some patients who have been infected with what's considered Bartonella, which is, I guess, the bacteria that can lead to cat scratch fever. Some of these patients also exhibit psychological symptoms, which is interesting to me because we're talking about, now we've seen this in animals in this episode, that they get very, I don't know, they sound very aggressive, very panicked, fearful, kind of on edge. And of course, Selina is attacked and infected, and we see the prodromal state where she's starting to get the fever and, the first signs of this infection. But the article I read actually showed that some patients who have cat scratch fever begin to exhibit some psychological symptoms like very quick agitation, panic attacks, some like mood problems, like mood fluctuations. And interestingly, although these are just case studies, these aren't like huge trials, because not a lot of people, this is a rarer thing. Not a lot of people develop this.
And it's kind of easily taken care of.
Right. So, we don't want to sit there, hey, you've just been scratched, let's watch you for a while, see what happens.
Right.
They really want to get treatment very, pretty much immediately. But in these cases that have been documented, it has been shown that the bacteria can lead to some of these more emotional behavioral symptoms, like being very agitated and panicky and kind of like these cats that you're talking about.
No!
Yes. Yeah.
So be careful, folks.
Yeah. And Selina should get that antitoxin very quickly. Although I get the impression that this is a much more severe case of anything. It might actually be something very dangerous, very deadly, if not treated.
Right. Like this is the BTAS version of cat scratch fever.
Right. So Batman, of course, gets the antitoxin and escapes from the lab. He's being pursued by the red-headed woman with a machine gun and Paunch, and a dog. Batman once again ditches a cape in order to get out of there. So wraps the dog up in a cape so that it can't attack, and then he runs away. And Batman jumps over the barbed wire fence. The dog chases him. The entire thing ends on a frozen lake, and Batman ends up going through the ice. But of course, Batman comes up through the ice, brings the thugs down.
It's off to the pound for you.
Now, what I find interesting here is they made it very clear that Batman shouldn't be able to survive this level of hypothermia. Batman then brings these two people who aren't nearly as well equipped to be in this frozen water into the water, right? Mm-hmm. Through the ice into the water, and manages to pull.
It's off to the pound for you.
He's not really thinking about, like, I need to get these people out of the water. He's got broken ice all around him. There's no real way of getting out just yet. But we ignored all of that. It's just, I'm going to make a quip, and then we'll figure this out later.
He has waited all night to make that quip, so he's going to take advantage of that.
Yeah. He, of course, sends them off to prison, and Batman then goes and rescues Selina, gives her the antitoxin, and the news comes out with her right there. Once again, she's a hero. So, what do we say about where these two are in their relationship?
Well, she's a hero to Gotham City. I don't think she's a hero yet to Bruce Wayne. I think that he still is categorizing her in this sort of like, once a villain, always a villain, or
because she went back into the costume and went against her probation, or
well, for a couple of reasons. One is, yes, she inevitably went back into the Catwoman persona, and yes, she violated her probation. But the other, I think, bigger issue is that he seems to have this very categorical, simplistic perspective of her, that he is not like us in that we have some flexibility in the way that we think, and we can understand that there's rationale for why she did what she did, and she may be on her way to recovery or on her way to a more meaningful pro-social lifestyle. Whereas I think that he still holds this, talk about holding grudges. This guy knows how to hold a grudge.
Oh, yeah.
So once she does something, and she has done several things that have, rubbed him the wrong way, he's less willing to see her in a different light, one that's more positive, one that could be, kind of in the direction of helping her toward a more, effective, healthy lifestyle.
And not only that, he does show that he's not really holding much of a grudge anymore by the end, because who returns Isis at the end of the episode? Batman. Batman brings Isis back, drops her off at the window, and then we see Batman sort of flying away on his, bat line and, all of that. So clearly he's looking out for Selina.
Yeah, of course. But, again, he has this, I think part of that piece too about not quite accepting her is that she has rejected the real him. She's really into the Batman, not so much into Bruce. And I think that rejection is still kind of, living with him, and he's not exactly going to let her off the hook.
Yeah. But as Bruce Wayne says,
that's not important, Selina. You are.
Oh.
So I have to ask, because we've been wondering about Bruce's emotional intelligence and his ability to connect with others. There are a couple of people with whom Bruce has proven that he can kind of connect with. He has trouble occasionally with Dick, but he does end up sort of taking him on and saying, like, you're you're basically family to me. I wouldn't want to lose you. but he is clearly enamored with Selina. So does this put to rest the idea that Bruce Wayne can't emotionally connect?
Well, I think that it's unwise to kind of say like, yes, he has emotional intelligence, or no, he doesn't have emotional intelligence. Remember that emotional intelligence is a feature, characteristic that is on a spectrum, right? So it's something that, he may in many areas lack that type of intelligence, but that doesn't mean that he doesn't have any emotional intelligence.
Okay.
Does that make sense? That
Sure.
there's this sort of, it's a dynamic
He's low
type
on
of
the
trait.
he's low on the EQ scale.
Ooh, you're fancy.
I know.
Did you look that up?
No, I didn't.
Are you sure?
I know that people with high IQ have a tendency to have low EQ.
That's
EQ
true.
being emotional quotient.
That's true. In fact, I was listening to Kevin and Bean, and they were interviewing people who had very high IQ, like they were tested. They received the IQ test and scored, well above 165, 175, which is definitely considered high IQ. And when they were calling in, they were saying that they were lacking some other skills socially and emotionally.
Right.
So one woman explained that she was great with numbers. She's great with formulas and programs, and she's very procedural, very organized. But then when it came to birthdays, she had a hard time remembering those dates, and it was because she couldn't really connect with the meaning, kind of the interpersonal importance of those dates.
Right.
And so it would kind of get her into trouble. That's just one small example, but if you can imagine many of those types of like really, really important things related to relationships and reciprocity and birthdays are actually very important to people. And the idea that someone so good with numbers and formulas actually couldn't quite grasp the importance of birthdays, or couldn't quite, meet the expectations socially around birthdays. And she even said, like, I didn't really even know what the big deal was. I had to kind of be reminded about that. And yes, this is all anecdotal, but it did remind me of the conversation we were having around the idea that, just because someone is very intelligent, very well schooled, and clearly can, is in many ways a problem solver, and who someone we would consider pretty in touch with their intelligence, could actually be pretty low on this emotional intelligence scale.
Well, and it makes me wonder, because I know that there are cases of people who have kind of, for lack of a better word, they have invented personas for themselves to help cope with this notion of what everyone else feels, and I should be feeling it too. And so they have a tendency to actually develop this character who is socially acceptable, even though that's not really them. That's just sort of like, this is what will help me get by. So I have the question, is that Bruce Wayne? Like you've talked about Bruce Wayne, Batman. And Bruce Wayne is the social character who everyone knows as the billionaire playboy.
Right, he's the public figure.
Is that Bruce Wayne compensating for his low emotional quotient?
I mean, it could be. It could be that he's recognized what he needs to do in order to develop socially, in order to be successful socially as Bruce Wayne.
Right.
There are some expectations around what he needs to do, how he needs to behave, what relationships he needs to maintain, right? That's really important,
right?
In his role as Bruce Wayne, head of Wayne Industries. But, on the other hand, I'm not saying that Bruce, the authentic person, is lacking in emotional intelligence altogether. Remember that I said there are some areas that he's not strong in. And I think that relates to very close relationships, like romantic relationships, like his role as a caretaker / parent / mentor, that he's not as in touch with those connections and with what other people need. Now, when he says that he, I would say that he does care about Selina and that those feelings are authentic. I think there are romantic feelings there. And I think he's being honest when he says, you really are what's important. But I also think that part of that romance or part of that infatuation or, desire to be close with her has to do with, frankly, with the notion that she actually doesn't want him, right? She wants Batman. So there's almost this safety around the idea of like, I can really love you. I can really, really care about you. And I'm going to stay safe because you actually don't care about me that way. So I can keep you at arm's length. I can express my emotions because I know that we share some kind of closeness, but I'm never going to be hurt by you because you don't like me that way. So he maintains this kind of like, unrequited relationship with her, but he's okay with that because it doesn't put him at risk of being hurt. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, it kind of sounds like he's a little bit of a masochist in a way where he doesn't allow himself, I guess he would allow himself the pleasure of being her boyfriend if she was actually interested in him. I guess the other question is he more attracted to her because she's not attracted to him? Like, is he one of those guys? And I guess we don't know yet. We've not seen enough.
But I think you mentioned that he continues to pursue her, knowing that she's not into it. And I think that is very telling, that there is some kind of reward in that. Now, most of us, we can't really do that for too long. We move on, right? But he doesn't.
Yeah. Well, so the question still stands, Drea, when it's all said and done.
Can this Lady Leopard really change her spots?
Clink.
Can she? I mean, are we seeing her transitioning more into potentially a heroine role, or is this the sort of thing where she's then going to fall back into, criminality at some point?
I don't know. I mean, I think that what we've gained from this is that they now have, Bruce and Selina have shared more together now, that they now have this, I guess, richer history, that they rely on each other more. And hopefully she sees some kind of value in that relationship, and she may start to believe him, as he wants to guide her or should guide her toward a lifestyle that's more healthy. But you're right. I mean, I don't know that we can tell right now.
Very cool. Well, it's always a pleasure catching up with Selina Kyle and Catwoman and Isis. Drea, you've got a really big appearance this coming weekend. Where are you going to be?
So I'm going to be at Long Beach Comic-Con this weekend, September 27th, 28th. And I will be on a panel with the folks who write the Harley Quinn comic, Amanda Connor and Jimmy Palmiotti.
Yeah. That should actually be pretty entertaining. What are you guys going to be talking about?
Yeah, so the panel is actually going to be pretty much about the psychology of Harley Quinn kind of the background and writing behind that. So it's actually the first panel I've been on that really focuses primarily on Harley Quinn. And
this is perfect for you, because if there's someone who can relate to Harley Quinn, it might be you. And, if you just took one step closer to the left, you might end up being just like her. You and your fascination with the Joker. Yeah, they should have a real treat having you on that panel.
Oh, well, thank you. It's absolutely it's an honor. It's a great pleasure to be just up there being able to chat about it. So I'm super excited. And so if you guys are going to be down in Long Beach, please check it out Sunday at 4 p.m.
Yeah. Always be sure to check, double check the site and everything. Times have a tendency to change occasionally, and, we wouldn't want you to miss it. So Long Beach Comic-Con, Sunday at 4.
Yes, sir.
Very cool. Next week, we have got probably one of my most anticipated episodes of Batman the Animated Series. This is one that stuck with me for a very long time, and I know it's one that you are going to be excited about. We are going to be talking about The Strange Secret of Bruce Wayne. That's right. We are going to be introduced to Hugo Strange.
Nice.
Yes. You really can't go wrong with a psychiatrist who seems to get a little under the cowl of Bruce Wayne. But then we also we meet up with the Penguin, Joker, Two-Face. It's basically a who's who.
It's a reunion.
It really is. And it's one of my all-time favorites, with a story by our good friend David Wise. So,
excellent.
Yeah. As always, you guys can find us on Twitter. We are at Arkham Sessions. Drea, where can they find you?
I am at Arkham Asylum Doc, and of course the website where you can find all of the posts, all of the podcasts, and my contact info is underthemaskonline.com.
And I am at bward028 on Twitter. As always, it has been an absolute pleasure, Drea. Thank you.
Thank you.
And until next week, guys, I'm Brian Ward.
I'm Dr. Andrea Letamendi.
And we are
the Arkham Sessions.